just as a couple getting on the same page from the very beginning on how you are going to be, and then also what your families are expecting. And then number 3, as a couple, putting aside what your families are expecting, what are you expecting out of this weekend? Live your life within the moment, and don't go wait until the morning. Welcome to The Wedding Plan. My name is Tyler Spire, and me and my team produce bespoke events across the globe. This podcast is where I share key advice for planning your own wedding, as well as behind-the-scenes adventures and stories from the events we produce. Hey friends, and welcome to The Wedding Plan. I cannot believe that it has been a full year since we started this podcast, and it has been such a joy and such a journey over this past year. And over the year, we've had some episodes really about us and the company. We've had some episodes that focus more towards wedding vendors. And then we've had a few episodes that have geared a little bit more towards couples, just as we've been learning what you guys want to hear. And what I've learned over this past year is that our biggest demand and biggest feedback and biggest excitement has been from couples who are planning their wedding and want down to earth, clear advice on the next steps. And so now, in year 2 of the wedding plan, that is going to become our primary focus. And I am so excited about this shift. Now, if you are a wedding vendor that has been following along, especially if you are a planner, I am still excited for you to be on board. In fact, I learned so much when I hear other seasoned wedding planners talking to their couples and the way that they educate them and bring them along in the process. I find that so educational to me as well. And so especially other planners, I'm excited for you to continue to be a part of this journey. And for any other wedding vendors that have been enjoying and following along, I don't think it ever hurts to understand the ins and outs of planning a wedding and what couples should be doing, because it only benefits all of us. And then for those of you who are couples that have been listening along, I am so excited to just share with you. Being in business in this wedding market now for 16 years, we have grown so much over the past 16 years, starting doing small dessert potluck weddings, weddings on a budget, growing to sort of mid-range budgets, and now being able to produce some really amazing luxurious events all over the world. We have a very seasoned team and a seasoned amount of experience where I know how to plan a budget wedding. I know how to plan a luxurious wedding. And some of the things are very different between the two, but a lot are very similar and very much the same. And so I'm excited to dive in with you all. Also, we're excited that starting this season, that this podcast is also now on YouTube. And so if you prefer a viewing experience rather than a listening experience, you can watch this on YouTube. And if you are on our YouTube channel and seeing this for the first time, this is our first episode of The Wedding Plan that is available on YouTube. We have a whole year of episodes kind of behind us that is available anywhere you can listen to a podcast on The Wedding Plan. But this is our first YouTube video. So welcome. We're excited to have you. Okay, friends. Well, I am so excited to dive right in. Now, if you are a couple and you are planning your wedding, this episode is all about where to begin. Now, if you Google, what are the first steps in planning my wedding? Almost every time what's going to come up is some sort of checklist that says, decide on your budget, decide on the level of formality, decide on your guest count, decide on the venue, on the planner, and there's kind of this itemized checklist. And our next episodes are going to be about all of those steps. But in my opinion, before you can even start talking about the budget, before you can start talking about the guest list, before you can start even talking about the venue, all these things that kind of come to mind, I think it is so important as a couple, when you have made the decision to get married and you have made the decision to host a wedding, I think the very first thing you need to do as a couple is to sit down and talk about the intention behind your wedding celebration. I tell all of my couples from our very first meeting that our key words in the entire process are peace, joy, and flexibility. I tell the bridal party and the family this at our wedding rehearsal, but it is so important to me that all of my clients, my couples from the very beginning identify that this process is going to be full of peace. There will be things that come up. In the real world, stuff happens. And in any wedding planning process, there are always things that come up, whether it is family dynamics, whether it's religious or cultural expectations, whether it's budget and finances and finding out that things you were dreaming of are more expensive than you thought they would be, and then navigating the budget and figuring out, are we going to stretch and do this? Are we going to pull back? Do we need to redefine the vision? Is there drama around who's invited, who's not invited? Guys, there are so many ins and outs to this entire process, and I am so excited to delve into so many of these aspects with you all over this next season. But before even getting into that, you have to decide as a couple that this is going to be a process full of peace. That when drama or unexpected things come your way, that you are going to stay grounded and stay in a place of peace, because we want this process to be full of joy. As stressful as wedding planning can be, I want all of my couples, whether you are one of my clients or one of our listeners, to experience joy throughout the process. And I truly believe that experiencing joy is a mindset. You can approach the planning process from, oh, this is going to be so stressful, or, oh, my family is going to be so difficult, or, oh, I can't afford what I want, or whatever it is. Or you can approach it from a place of, I am going to choose to make this so full of joy. And when unexpected curves come my way, I am going to remain peaceful. And finally, my last keyword is flexibility. My couples that have the best experiences in the planning process are those couples that are peaceful, joyful, and flexible. And now, when I say flexibility, that doesn't mean compromising on your values. It doesn't mean compromising on something that's really important to you. If you have a really specific vision that you really want, it doesn't mean hearing, oh, that might be more expensive, and be like, okay, it doesn't matter. Instead, flexibility to me means listening to professional advice on different courses you can take. It means if you have a really specific vision and it's not going to fit within your budget, for example, either choosing to be flexible on your budget or flexible with your vision. No, each path requires flexibility. And I think that those of us that approach the wedding planning process with peace, joy, and flexibility as sort of our grounding mantra or keywords, it goes so much more smoothly. Wedding planning is such a fun adventure. From the very beginning, you have all the joy and excitement of being engaged. You've just made this incredible decision to get married, to be with this person for the rest of your life. And I think it's really important to remember that weddings also come with all these familial, cultural, and religious sort of expectations and presuppositions about what it should be, right? If you grew up Jewish, you're immediately expecting your wedding probably to have some sort of chuppah, some sort of breaking of the glass at the end. Maybe you're going to sign the ketubah, et cetera, et cetera. If you grew up Hindu, you're having a traditional Indian wedding, you're expecting multi-day celebration, some sort of fun barat, an amazing ceremony, sometimes in the morning, and there's a luncheon afterwards, and then there's, the reception later, the sangeet the night before. If you grew up Christian, you may be expecting a pastor to marry you. Maybe it's in a church, maybe it's outside, maybe it's a priest. I don't know. There's all of these expectations, right? And in some families, weddings are a huge deal. Right? You grow up and you have aunts and uncles or cousins or people getting married, and everyone's getting dressed up and traveling to be there. And it's this big, amazing gathering that you all look forward to. And then I've actually worked with some couples whose families never grew up really having big weddings or anything. It was just like, oh yeah, a courthouse, or oh yeah, just like a potluck. Oh, really simple. And then my couple's coming and saying, no, we're going to be like the first big family wedding. And so again, as a couple, in addition to choosing to be peaceful, joyful, and flexible, before getting into all the details, I think it's important to talk with each other about what are weddings like in your family. Not saying that you need to copy that, but like for partner number one growing up, what were weddings like growing up for you? What was your parents' wedding like, if your parents are even married? Partner number two, what are weddings like in your family or your religion or your culture? Understanding what each of you as partners are expecting out of the wedding day, and then also what your families are expecting, I think is really helpful. Because if you have one side of the family that's very religious or really has a defined cultural kind of wedding tradition, I think it's important to understand what your future in-laws are kind of expecting when you say the word wedding. And now notice, this is before even opening the conversation with the in-laws and other people being like, do you guys have any vision for the wedding? And obviously there's situations where you do that and situations where you don't. But just as a couple, getting on the same page from the very beginning on how you are going to be, and then also what your families are expecting. And then number 3, as a couple, putting aside what your families are expecting, what are you expecting out of this weekend? I love when couples are so intentional and have those conversations. What do we want out of our wedding weekend? I love when couples go separately down to a piece of paper each and write their 5 top priorities for the weekend and then compare notes. In fact, in my kind of initial early calls with clients, sometimes if I'm not sensing a clear definition, I'll ask the couples, tell me your top 5 each separately. And it's so interesting because sometimes the first thing that comes into someone's mind is, I want to have a dance party. I want it to just be so fun. And then I have other people that their very first thing that come out of their mind is connection. I just want to have quality time with the people I love. Others are like, oh my gosh, the flowers and the decor. And notice, none of these are wrong. It is not shallow to want a beautiful celebration of your love. It is not shallow or bad to want an epic dance party, and it's not shallow or bad to want epic connection. I've also had couples say, my top priority is just appreciating the people who love me. And I want them to just have the most amazing weekend. I want it to be all about our guests. And again, none of these are right or wrong, but these core things that you are expecting from the weekend or that you are hoping for the weekend will help inform the rest of it. If you are wanting a weekend of just connection with your closest people, you're probably not going to have a 250 person wedding, because it's almost impossible to have genuine connection with 250 people over the course of that weekend. If you are expecting the most epic dance party, you probably are not having a wedding of less than 50 people, right? You need a sort of a critical mass to make that party happen. Or I don't know, maybe your friends are all really into dancing and you can do that with a smaller amount of people. If you are expecting to really appreciate your guests, then you need to choose a venue that's conducive to that. You need to have a plan that's conducive to that. How are you going to make them feel welcomed, loved, and appreciated? Knowing what you guys are each expecting out of your big day will also help inform the process. I find that when couples are intentional from the very beginning, you're engaged, you're excited, all the things, and you go and sit down together, you go out to dinner, open a bottle of wine, get takeout, whatever's comfortable for you, and have these conversations. Hey, we together are committing to be peaceful, joyful, and flexible through this process. We acknowledge that hard things are going to come up, that there's going to be disagreements on budget, that there's going to be maybe some challenges around the guests, there's going to be challenges with family expectations, but we're in it and we're excited to get married. And we are committing right now to being peaceful, joyful, and flexible through this entire process. And if anyone else in the family, in the world, our friends, whatever it is not acting peaceful, joyful, and flexible, we as a couple are going to acknowledge that they're not being peaceful, joyful, and flexible, but that we can only control our actions and that we're going to stay that way because you are choosing to operate through your wedding planning process from a place of joy. Then, once you've made that choice, fully understanding your family's wedding traditions. What were weddings like when you grew up? Were they important? Were they not? Were they religious? Are there traditions or expectations that the other wasn't aware of? Just fully understanding where you've come from and what the expectations are for weddings. And then finally, with where you are now, fully understanding the core values of what's important to you in this wedding weekend. I've been married for 12 years and I love this approach to just life in general, right? My wife and I, like when something hard is coming up, one of the first things we say to each other is, hey, we're on each other's team. No matter how many disagreements or things are going to come up in this situation where there's a lot of opinions, a lot of things happening, we're on the same team. Then often that conversation goes to, is there anything coming in from our past right now that's influencing this decision? I'm feeling like this is what my parents would want me to decide. I'm feeling like this is my expectation based on a past experience. And then 3, acknowledging where we've come from, acknowledging that we're on the same team. And then number 3, well, how do we want to move forward together? What's important to you? what's important to me, where are the areas we're willing to compromise, where are the areas that we can be totally unified on, where are the areas we need to agree to disagree and support each other in that disagreement, and then move forward. So finally, I like to say that wedding planning is a great sort of test drive for marriage. And I don't mean test drive in that like you're not necessarily wanting to go forward or something like that, but more in the fact that when else in your life are you in a high pressured environment where there's a lot of money on the line, a lot of expectations on the line, all the people you love have opinions, everyone's involved and excited, everyone's coming together, it's all in one moment, right? And it's going to be this amazing weekend with all the dynamics and expectations and people and love and joy and all of it. And it's a high pressure environment and it's beautiful. It's amazing. I love weddings. I love them so much. And that is why I love doing what I do, to be able to celebrate love and all of this. But there are a lot to navigate. And so again, welcome to this season 2 of The Wedding Plan. If you are newly engaged, I'm so excited to bring you along this journey talking through wedding planning. And next week, we are going to talk about those first practical steps in planning the wedding once you've been unified as a couple and what your goals are and what your attitude is going to be over the wedding planning process.
Live your life within the moment, and don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night away.